We are here. Welcome once again to C9K. My name is Steve Jaguar. This is the best, let's say, online show for all things containers, Kubernetes security, with live tool times of all your favorite tools. My name is Steve Jaguar again.
And I'm his co-host. Yeah, and I'm his co-host, Mike Foster. Today, we're going to be talking Move It, why security is always a trade-off, a bunch of things coming in C, a big acquisition, and of course, Steve is going to be looking at GHAT for tool time. Thanks again for joining, and welcome to the show.
Off to a rocky as hell start. We do, for those watching now and in the future, we do decide what we're going to say during the intro and then inevitably push the button and screw it up.
Yeah, there's just so much going on. I'm trying to edit, move screens around. It's always a fun time. Yep. But yeah, for those joining, this is a recorded session. We'll be live on Friday. We're recording this on Wednesday. I will try to join if I can. But if not, happy Friday. All the links are always in the description. Hit the bell so that you know when we're going live. And of course, we'll be back in 2 weeks from now. So if you like what you see, we'd love to see back and hopefully live commenting on all the dumb things we do. Really appreciate it. Yeah. But we have a packed show for y'all today. Actually, we had to cut a bunch of news because it was so packed. So it's very, very interesting. You want to, any announcements? I know we have B-Sides and Black Hat coming up next week. Steve, anything you want to get into before we jump into general news?
No, I'm going to be at all three. So if you happen to catch me, find me on LinkedIn, send me a message, and we'll go for beer.
A lot of beer, definitely. Oh, yeah. I'm jealous you're going to be in Vegas, and hopefully everybody gets some tan and drinks a lot of water.
It's going to be hot.
Very hot.
All right, first up, Acuity. This is Business Wire, actually. This was the link we had, but I went to the actual site. I don't know if there's anything particularly amazing on here, but an AI assistant powered by Argo CD. Here's the actual site. And I think you put this in here, right?
I did. I thought it was pretty interesting because I think that AI has, let's say we always talk security. I think it has more function in the developer and CI/CD rules. So very interesting to see how they're going to apply it. Of course, Argo CD is the graduated CNCF project. A lot of companies take that project and then turn it into something that's profitable because it has a very lax license. So very interesting. Argo with Acuity, single control plane, always single control plane. I'm just curious to see what's different about
what's the AI bit. I mean, there's a bit of a description back here talking about how you can, I guess it's detecting misconfigurations in your Kubernetes, in anything controlled by Argo, essentially. So Argo is going to be pulling your deployments and making sure that they're healthy. But I guess at the same time, it's using some form of GPT to ultimately make sure that it's all set up in its best possible way. Key benefits, quick identification of deployment and application failures.
Yeah, that's a big one, obviously, because everything is GitOps as code. You know, if you used Argo CD, you can have these deployment manifests. It will check your applications. If they go down, it can automatically revert back to a previous version. If you're, you know, upgrading and something goes wrong, it can automatically take over and adjust. So I see the AI experience as, let's say you go and deploy something for the first time. It'll give you feedback and say, you don't have, you know, a proper rollback process set up. We'd recommend this. Here's the proper scaling based off of the CPU that you've asked for. Just things like that, recommendations to get you off the ground quicker, I think are really interesting. Legally, I always wonder how you could build that into a product. Like, are you liable for the suggestions, or does everything come with a little legal disclaimer? But that's my guess. 14-day free trial. We might have to test it out.
Hell yeah, I just saw that. 14-day, we could maybe just log in and take it for a spin. That'd be pretty cool. It would all, I don't know if it does it, but what would be awesome for me is that if it found things that were wrong in your deployment because of the deployment manifest, for example, if it was integrated enough, and it is integrated with Git, could it do a pull request comment, or could it submit the changes on your behalf? You know what I mean?
You wonder how that happens. That'd be the next step. Like, hey, the AI recommends this change. Do you want to accept or reject it? I think that would get around a lot of the legal hurdles, because then you're specifically clicking to make the change, right?
I mean, I am stealing that idea from Bridge Group because that's what we did.
Yeah.
But I mean, they should do it. It's a good idea.
Yeah, and that's why I think when you're talking about application as code, IAC, like AI works a lot better at that level than, hey, you have this runtime detection. Do you want to enforce on it? That's a very different impact, right?
You got it. Yeah, that can be dicey.
No kidding. On to the next topic. Move It Hack. You've been following this one very closely.
It's just, oh God, it's just, I like the tale of the Move It Hack may be longer than we realize. Just going through the number of, the total number of organizations compromised remains a mystery. Just the I don't even, how do you say it's
Clop.
Extortion group. Yeah, I guess having exploited the Progress Software's file transfer service, which is just nonstop claims. So hundreds of companies, state and local governments. It's pretty huge. Like when did we report it? It was a while ago, and it's every week there's another article about how it's almost what do you call it, log4j-ish.
Yeah, it just hangs around
because it's tool. It's a business to business tool.
Yeah, like file transfer. It's something that people get used to, and it's really hard to get them off of it. Teach them a new protocol or a new application. Right? It's something people rely on.
And it's something that people who aren't necessarily security aware are using. So rather than read the news like we do and be on top of security things like this, they're probably not. They're just using it, and then they get exploited. They're like, what? Then they look at the news and realize they should have done something about this ages ago. So
yeah, I think the tough thing from an organizational standpoint is how do you implement a new type of file transfer that's cross-org and then teach everybody to do it in a short amount of time. That's the big challenge. If you can't update it and secure everything. So
you disrupt your entire internal ecosystem of business.
Yeah. And it's also why FTPs are notoriously targeted, right?
Totally. Yeah. So again, we will just keep watching it and see how crazy it gets.
Yes.
On to the next one. Speaking a little bit of crazy, how did this not get into our WTF section?
It's an update, but I think it is kind of crazy because the implementation is the thing that's going to be a big WTF.
Yeah. Disclose cybersecurity breaches in 4 days.
So the SEC, who notoriously doesn't enforce anything, is going to enforce this rule. It's going to be interesting. They have a legit argument that is, if somebody holds on to a cybersecurity breach in order to, let's say, maybe get through a quarter or right before filings or something like that, you are technically misleading investors. And so the SEC is putting a arbitrary date to say that when you have a cybersecurity incident, you have to report it to investors within 4 days. Now, what is an incident? How large an incident needs to be? What type of disclosure needs to be there? They do say that there is delays for, national security or public safety risks, but what classifies as a public safety risk or a national security risk? There's no information there. The other thing too is, okay, what if I have to publish it in 4 days and we haven't developed a fix in 4 days? Why am I telling everybody about this? Hey guys, we've had this massive incident. We haven't fixed it yet, but we need to tell the investors that something's happening. I think realistically, this is something that's going to get implemented, but the actual enforcement mechanism is going to be challenging, like most SEC rules.
Yeah, even the definition of a breach, right? Like it was one of those things. Like when GDPR came out, a breach was very, very widely considered to be any possibility of data. You don't have to have proven anybody took your data. You just have to win, oh crap, I left the door open. I left the keys in the lock. Oh, it's a breach. You got to tell everybody. Is it the same level of I don't know what I call it, over the top aggressive definition of breach, or is it really you have to show that something went wrong And it says to investors. It doesn't say public though, does it?
No, but people that are following along will see it, which I think is interesting. Like if they have a form that they have to disclose, like an SEC form that within 4 days you have to go and fill it out and say, hey, we have a breach. Here's the impact. We're not going to disclose like exactly how it happened or anything like that. To me, I don't necessarily see that big of an issue with it. It's like you're filing a form that's public to say we have an issue. It's like, okay. Yeah. And then you let the investors kind of figure out how big they think the issue is, right? Yeah. So it's one of those catch-22. Like, do people really listen to some of the GDPR announcements? Does it affect the market that much? No, because a lot of them are fluff. But it's something.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll see how that plays out, or it doesn't get enforced at all. The next one, Container Solutions. This is a series, Money Flows Part 3. You're only as agile as your budget, written by Ian Meal. He is based in the UK, and I really like this article. It's a big article. Did you kind of go through, because he's basically doing a little bit of a profile on SpaceX and KPIs and how they define success. He actually seems pretty complimentary about SpaceX, actually, if not a tad puzzled.
Yeah, and I read the first bit. I think SpaceX is interesting because it's notoriously CapEx heavy. A lot of the times you have to prove profitability, but SpaceX just continuously invested in order to like push their way through problems.
Yeah.
Whereas other companies don't have that luxury. And so I thought, and then he goes into depth as to KPIs, I believe. Do you want to continue? That's all that I took away from it.
They're doing a lot of things that aren't measurable. Like he's talking about project management, cost per kilogram, how much money do we have, what's the rate which money is being burned as realistic, measurable KPIs. But what's funny is he's talking about they don't really have a budget. This is what you were saying. They have an insane amount of money, and so they're not throwing budgets at things or deadlines. The one I liked actually is all the way down at the bottom, the reverse Conway. So the Conway's law being the product tends to end result looking like your organizational structure. So if you've got a legacy organizational structure with high degrees of siloing between departments, then you'll have a product that looks really clunky and Frankenstein and won't be communicating internally because the people who wrote each part were so isolated. Whereas SpaceX apparently looked at how they wanted the product to be and designed their organizational structure around how the product should look. Like they did it completely backwards, which actually sounds pretty awesome from my perspective. I've never heard of anybody or heard the phrase reverse Conway before, but I like the idea that if you're able to start from scratch and you're going to create a product that looks like this, you build the perfect organization that will be most successful to get the right outcome. If you're aware of the fact that Conway's law tends to play
Do you think that that's one of the advantages of startups when they're created?
I think it's a huge advantage of startups. I mean, the other advantage of startups is that everyone tends to do everything, right? So you have no silos at all, which is why startups have such a high degree of velocity in the first instance. But it's interesting when you see, having worked for startups and gigantic companies like I do right now and have in the past, particularly where you acquire companies, you end up with, like Palo Alto gets accused, Prisma Cloud gets accused of being a bit of it's just a bunch of startups that were acquired under one roof. And Synopsys was the same way. It's like to be able to reverse Conway yourself out of a bunch of acquisitions is difficult.
Yeah.
So it's interesting a company of that size has it top of mind. You know what I mean? It's cool. I like it. So it's a good article. I haven't gone back and seen part 1 and 2, but I intend to do that because Ian's kind of he's a smarty pants, so he tends to write good articles.
Yeah, no kidding. Part 3, we always find it in part 3, part 4, and we're like, oh yeah, let's go backwards.
We do.
Be a theme.
Yes. Okay. Moving swiftly onwards, the CISA NSA released joint guidance defending continuous integration and continuous delivery environments. Where are we? There we go. They delivered a cybersecurity information sheet, which always fills me with a little bit of dread when someone releases a sheet or a white paper. It's gonna be like 200 pages, some intern's project, but it's not bad. I popped it up here afterwards. Here's the sheet.
Okay.
And it's not long. It's not long. It's like 22 pages. And if you really want to see what you're getting, you just look at the table of contents. It starts talking about CICD. I know, and everybody, this came out, and internally, all the people from the Cider acquisition did a little party because they were the ones who actually created the CICD top 10. And it's quoted all over the place in here, like poison pipeline execution, insufficient pipeline access controls. Basically, they just grabbed it and created a paper around that particular top 10, and then started going into methods of hardening and advice, just basics of structuring around it, because I guess it crossed their path and they went, oh, we should, we're the government, we should have a guideline around this. But this is all this stuff is all cut and paste, like straight out of it. CICD top 10. But it is a really quite nice, tidy summary of the attack vectors and reasonable mitigation against all of these different styles of attacks. So yeah, pretty cool, easy read.
Yeah, 20 pages, not 200. So
yeah, no, it's actually pretty handy.
Sweet. And then
and then this last one in Trainer,
the last one,
another PDF.
Yeah, I dropped this one in because that came across my desk, 2 pages, and it's just VMware Sovereign Cloud Solution Overview. And Steve and I were chatting last week when this came up, and it's like, what does Sovereign Cloud ring a bell? What does it come across as? And to you, it's, and I think to me as well, it's clouds in specific geos or countries, right? So I think that you're going to see more and more of this as there become more data rules for countries, as certain geos start to lock down their cybersecurity rules to prevent access from other countries. You're going to see like VMware wants to say, hey, drop our cloud locally in Canada, and you can have one in the US, and you can set up rules so that no data gets between the two of them. There's no SKUs. There's nothing really to show what they're trying to do here, except for this 2-pager, which I always find very interesting from a marketing perspective. Like, what's the CTA here, other than to say, we can do this?
Yes, for you non-marketing people, that's call to action.
Yeah. And I mean, the use case there is one of the biggest use cases, right? Big companies with data centers on-prem that want to take advantage of AI. And so it's like, how do you get your data on-prem into the cloud, do it in an effective manner so you could take advantage of those tools? And I think that that's what they're trying to solve.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? Having worked for a whole bunch of vendors and expanded beyond, almost like we were just talking about, expanding beyond getting your first customer. And then suddenly you start to like sell something to Germany. Germany is notoriously, we want the cloud to be sovereign. We want the data to be sovereign. We want everything's got to be in Germany. And suddenly you're like, and you have to do it manually most of the time, or you have to have all the multi-regions all set up for every customer that you may ever have in any country at any time, if they care. And not all of them care, but Germany does. So, so this could be really handy for a lot of people.
I mean, Anthos and other providers have been trying to follow this. It's just nobody really came out and said, this is what it's for, and this is the use case. I think it's become more and more prominent in the years to come.
For sure.
All right. It's I'm on the chopping block this week for the spicy hot take. Okay, let's get that out of there. So for the hot take this week, security is always a trade-off. Pretty straightforward. Not a lot of people use it in different aspects of their life. So the WTF section that's coming up after is going to talk about how the EU is implementing new rules in order to make updates to your computers or your phones, your work phones, whatever it is. That always means a host running. That means something running locally so that it can trigger it with admin permissions, which introduces an attack vector that can then be used. Point is that in order to get more security or enforce more security, you have to relinquish some control over your life in order to get it done. This applies to almost anything in life. In fact, I challenge you to disprove me wrong in the comments by coming up with something where you actually are more secure by giving up control of something, by not letting an entity take control over it. I know there's going to be arguments to say, well, companies get hacked and all these things happen. But if you were siloed by yourself and you were trying to do all of the advantages of a company and scale and do all this stuff without the security team, you'd get exposed and hacked within 2 seconds. So I guess my point is that with any larger organization, the more you scale, the more that security and organizational approach comes into play, the less secure you're going to be. That's at a country level. When a country is trying to secure its own borders, secure its infrastructure, secure its people from maybe not nice habits, you are going to give up control over taxes, over surveillance, over something like that. Again, kind of curious. This is a hot take, so I want to hear what you have to say in the comments. Hopefully Steve doesn't come on and roast me after, but thanks for listening. Let's get into the crazy stuff. Yes.
All right. Well, this is what you were. I'm not going to roast you. I agree with you. Damn it. Tech firms form coalition to combat cybersecurity risks ahead of EU rules.
Crazy. Yeah. So this is what I was talking about it triggered my hot take. The EU and all of this broad coalition of 11 founding members, including Cisco, Intel, AT&T, they all go to the EU and to these large organizations and say, we know of a way to make things more secure. It's somewhat regulatory capture. There is an aspect of them actually wanting to do good. These things don't pop out of nowhere, right? Some things are just practical. And with the EU and all the device laws that are coming into effect, if you have a Red Hat or Apollo device that I work on, sometimes you don't perform updates. I mean, I know that even Steve shares his Chrome browser and I see a red update in the top right. So
always there.
Companies want to crack down on that, and they want to make it so that you are doing your iPhone updates, you're doing your updates. And that means, they have more control. If a single device gets compromised, they can shut off access, etc. Because these are new attack vectors. Now, in order to do that, you have to apply some sort of admin permission for an entity that's connecting to your device that is remote. Now, that's okay in theory, as long as the people who are connecting to your device are trustworthy. But let's say all these devices are in an area that all of a sudden cops need to go into or enforce or do specific things. Do you think devices are going to be shut down? Do you think devices might be used for other behavior? You're giving access to something that they don't trust you to do, but you better have the trust that they're going to use it properly. That's my WTF section. This came across my desk and I was like, you're giving admin permissions to a remote entity in the EU with oversight from who exactly? And just the fact that that agent's there means you have a backdoor onto your devices, right?
Yeah.
If you have an update agent, either some new security permissions need to be carved out with that device so that it's like update only and there's no, turn on camera or turn on something like that. All that needs to be carved out and decided. Anyways.
Wow. Yeah. And in the post-pandemic, heavily distributed workforce with devices everywhere, it's not going to be straightforward.
Yeah, it definitely is the new security challenge. Even practitioners I talk to doing OTP and getting everybody to use devices properly in the remote workspace, setting up VPNs so people can't travel and access data from wherever they're trying to sneak off to. That's their priority right now. So going to be an interesting couple of years.
All right. So next on WTF, an apology from VirusTotal on the recent accidental data exposure. I guess I get a sad, sick pleasure from seeing companies that are involved in security making security boo-boos. And then I even more entertained when, in this particular instance, the CSV file that was accidentally uploaded by an employee to the VirusTotal platform contained limited information of our premium account holders. Names of companies, VirusTotal group names, email addresses of group administrators, basically all sorts of stuff. It's like, it's just some employee just went, uploaded. You don't know how it happened, but it's just, what?
Now, only users could see this, right?
Yeah, right. So you can see other users' data if you happen to be on the platform when this thing was there. Obviously, they found it and removed it, of course, but it's just one of these moments where it's like, did we just upload a list of all of our customers and their contact details? Oops.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I've had examples where people have forwarded emails from other customers by accident, not internally, this is at previous companies, because you're doing consulting and, oh, so-and-so got the contract, you didn't, but then they respond to us thinking that we're the other company. So we see who won the actual project, things like that. Yeah. Always hurts because you can't get that email back. It's like, oops.
Nope. It's out there now. It's forever.
Yep.
All right. Well done, Virus Total, on your candid apology there. But even this has got to be the biggest WTF in the list.
This is a funny one that came across my desk. Not just for the market share aspect, security is still growing. I forget what CAGR stands for. I know it's down there in the
it is
compound annual growth rate. So this is the global container and Kubernetes security market forecast to grow to basically 8.2 billion by 2030.
Yeah.
So pretty significant.
Well,
what is interesting is they talk about the leaders in the market.
Let's get down there. Who are they? What?
So StackRock's not even a product for the last 2.5 years.
Twistlock.
Twistlock spelled
not a product. Twist spelled with a space in it.
Yeah. New Vector spelled NevVector.
NevVector. And how about this one? And other prominent players.
Yeah.
Wherever they are. Yeah. So what time machine planet is this article from? It's like almost 100% wrong.
Yeah. Well, I think that the market analysis is probably on point. It seems like they just combined two articles together and said, here's the market overview. Done. Yeah.
Or I think when you first throw this in here, I was like, was this generated by the 2021 limited ChatGPT article? Like, is it just, and it went, oh, what were the #1 brands in 2020? That's probably, not even Twistlock was acquired then. So that's still wrong. So it's really out of date.
Yeah. Interesting.
Anyway, there you go.
Who knows?
Casting a bit of doubt on the reliability of Taiwan news.
Yeah. Hey, StackRock's still dominant as an open source platform for free. Dominating the market share. Pretty good.
All right, one last WTF before we start talking about the money.
Yes.
Yet another GPT related hacking tool. Last week we talked about Worm GPT, and now we've got FraudGPT tailored for sophisticated attacks. Are you a sophisticated attacker? Do you drink tea with your pinky out? Then maybe this is for you. This is a cybersecurity firm. The offering has been circulating since, a few weeks ago at a subscription cost of $200 a month, or with discounts for longer term. How about that? So it's basically used to write malicious code, undetectable malware, find leaks, vulnerabilities. I imagine it does spear phishing, all sorts of wonderful things that traditional AI is restricted from doing. Somebody has taken it and made fraudbot.
Yes, it's called a FAS, phishing as a service model.
Nice.
Just add ass to everything, and then you get it as a service model.
just add ass to everything.
FAS.
That's nice.
We don't need SaaS anymore.
Nope. Oh my goodness. So that's wild. Well, all right. Maybe if we, I don't think there's a 14-day free trial, so you probably won't see it until.
Yeah, no kidding. But I mean, for companies who want to do some basic examples, I mean, would you spend like $1,700 and have a couple security researchers look into it?
I would.
Maybe it's part of like your research budget or something like that. It'd be interesting.
Sure. Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's spend some money.
Number one, tiny, 20 million.
Tiny. Yeah. So this is for C-Day. Sorry to interrupt you. Socket landing 20 million investment to help companies. This was supposed to be breaking news because it came across my desk yesterday. Did you get a chance to look at it? What'd you think?
I was going to click through and see what they did. Socket.dev. There it is. Huge news. Andreessen Horowitz That's actually a pretty good endorsement. I didn't realize that's who it was. Ship with confidence, fights vulnerabilities, and provides visibility, defense, and depth. Proactive supply chain protection for JavaScript and Python. What are they like? How did you get into it?
This is very similar to Endor. So looking at open source libraries, looking at the licenses associated with it, generating SBOMs. This is a sneak in Endor competitor. This space is going to be heating up quickly. Yeah. So very interesting to hear them get Series A. I'm assuming, I don't think that Endor has had a Series A announcement yet either. But
no, what was this? Was this seed? This is Series A, 20 million. Oh, but Endor had 20 million in seed.
Yes.
So they maybe got a little bit more money, but still, I mean, you might, well, if I was Endor, I might go, oh no, competitor, but that's reassuring, right?
Yep.
Competitor shows that the market is looking for more. So yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, I always wonder too, companies that have invested in Endor see this come in and they're like, a competitor, like maybe we'll spend like a couple million on this one because one of them is going to work.
Yeah.
And if they both work, we hit the jackpot. If we truly think there's a market fit for it, then make a ton of money.
I also noticed up here, demo or install. Is that free? If I click install, is it like they're an open source thing? Because that makes me very curious. Wonder if there's a way there's a freemium version. I'll take a look. Maybe
tool time.
Show. Look at that.
Stay tuned. 2 weeks. We might be there.
Okay. All right.
Looking at Socket. All right. What do we got coming up next? I think it's a big one. You found this one, right?
Oh God. Yeah, this is crazy. Thales buys Imperva for 3.6 billion cybersecurity deal. That's a beast. Imperva's pretty huge.
Yeah.
And have been around a while for 3.26 billion. So I would have thought something like Imperva would have been bigger than 3.6 billion. They seem, I lump them in there with like CrowdStrike and things like that. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like they do kind of everything. They say they do cloud native, they do intrusion, they do network security. They kind of like they're one of those CrowdStrike type of companies. So it's weird to think that they got bought, but kind of reassuring that there are people out there with budgets big enough to make a $3.6 billion purchase. Like that's nuts. Because like when companies like Sneak say they're worth 3 billion, I think, well, are people going to buy you for that or what? But there's hope.
If you scroll down, it says Thales defended the purchase price, saying it was paying 6.1 times the sales for a business that Thoma Bravo had bought at a multiple of 5 times, while in the meantime making it profitable. These valuations had more recently been closer to 7 to 8, soaring as high as 18 to 20 times during the market bubble. So I think the prices are coming back down into a place where companies can afford to actually buy them and see some profitability in the long term. Certain things like, buying it would generate 110 million of pre-tax synergies is an interesting phrase. I think these obviously go in costs. Companies get to write off expenses because of these purchases, things like that. So there's some wiggle room in what they're really buying too, right?
Totally. Yeah. And it's interesting that, well, I mean, if we go back, like I don't think I've done a hot take on it recently, ever, but maybe it would be one for the future. But the idea that making a purchase of that caliber, Thales buys Imperva, you're like, go buy some Thales stock, or you maybe should have bought some just before that happened, because the perception of Thales is going to go way up in terms of like their ability to provide secure services. Like it's going to do wonders for their stock, which, who knows, depending on how much they're worth, could make the entire purchase basically almost negligible.
Yeah. Yeah. It frees up more capital, which is part of the purchase. So they get the tax deduction and more capital to spend on other projects. They just grow their way out of the purchase pretty much.
And they just bought a huge engineering team that's with cybersecurity expertise in one big wallop, right? So it's yeah, it will definitely increase the valuation of Talos like considerably. So pretty cool.
Very neat. All right, I think it's cookie time and then a live demo.
Okay.
Now what starts with the letter C?
All right, so this one in Hacker News, data exfiltration attack scenario, the Porsche experience. If you like nice cars. So this is a checkmarks article essentially, but it's talking about their research team that found an attack scenario, which was not particularly complicated. If you, they go through it in a lot of detail here, where they were able to create a, let's say, a request that led to a, I guess, almost like traditionally cross-site request forgery. Nobody even considers cross-site request forgery a possible attack vector anymore. It's fallen off the OWASP top 10. You have to really screw up to have one of these be able to play out. And they were able to do this on, I guess it was on the Porsche website, experience.porsche.com. Yeah, to fetch data and perform operations. User authentication, user profile. Found some interesting API requests. And yeah, it does some strange things because they had some very bizarre settings that are all bad. Was it? Oh, and they were able to do it from other origins. That was it as well. So they didn't have to do it from Porsche.com. They were able to, like, all the bad things.
Mm-hmm.
Access control, allow origin response header. It makes me wonder when this site was written, because it's a GraphQL though. That makes it feel like kind of modern, and yet it's doing mistakes, making mistakes that typically frameworks within which you write have built-in protection against. Am I saying that correctly? Because typically if you're writing this in, I don't care what it is, you could be writing it in C# or something. And it's almost impossible to write something in C# that is susceptible to a C# attack. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of an interesting read.
It's my understanding that I think it's like they kind of have a microservice architecture where you request something. Let's say you're on the main web page, it will go and ask a database for the information and then display it to the user. And I think what's going on here is that in the main web page, you could actually go and pull the token that requests into the backend or into the different services. And so then once you do that, you can change the header or make a change and then just interact with that entity altogether. And so instead of getting filtered and properly pulling like what you request, I can just go into the database and pull everything. Like there wasn't restrictions on what could be pulled from the secondary services with this token. That's my understanding of what's going on here.
Well, typically there's a CSRF token in there that changes with every transaction to prevent you being able to do this. Mm-hmm. Like getting it, so it's kind of nuts.
And so it looks like the JWT token cookie and the HTTP request header had the same value. So that was one of the big, instead of having a unique token so that people couldn't do that, it was the same. So that means anybody that had access to the website could then go and use it to authenticate with the different services.
So it's, if you're like, I would say if you're a fan of doing some of the OWASP, capture the flags and looking at the way you're supposed to crack those, this is actually a pretty good introduction if you read through and see everything that they're doing and go, oh, okay. Because it's the kind of thing that you think OWASP would see and go, oh, okay, let's make a mock version of this and make it a challenge in a future capture the flag. Because the ability to use something like Burp Suite and sit in the middle and do replay attacks by stealing tokens is exactly the kind of stuff that ends up happening in these things. And this is cool. This is an interesting play-by-play of what the Checkmarks research team did. So pretty cool. It's not CVE technically, but whatever. It's a vulnerability and it's interesting.
Still counts. All right. Up for tool time. Steve is taking on GHAT. Let's do it.
Does everybody know what time it is?
Ooh, that was weird.
Yeah, there we go.
All right. GHAT. Doesn't have a website. Does have a cool logo. Where is it? Load it up. Here's the logo.
Just doesn't have a good dark light mode logo, but we get it.
Oh yeah, is that what's happened?
Yeah.
Hilarious. Okay. Well, this is the same author, James Wolfenden, that wrote a tool that he came on the show and showed us. But I really quite like this one. It is the GitHub Actions tool, GHAT. I think that's what it stands for. And it's super simple in that all it's trying to do is change your sloppily created GitHub action workflows, which are dependent upon typically versions. If you get an action, it says you want version 1.2.1 or something. And even if you use the GitHub Actions, let's say wizard, and just go to the marketplace and poke them all in, it will then write in your action. But it itself uses versions. And with all these supply chain attacks that are going on at the moment, if you're using something that uses versions, it's susceptible to a form of attack because versions are not, like container image versions, they're not pinned. You know, the entire version of what action you're using can completely be swapped out, and yet because you're using a version, it can be anything you want. So if you can find some way of attacking the GitHub action supply chain, which is a thing, then you can be susceptible. You really want to pin versions accurately. And they have an example here on the screen where action setup go 401. Once you've run the utility, you got the actual we call it the hash for it, which is an immutable version. So now even if they change it and try and repin as 401, the hash is going to be different. So you're going to still be pulling the same one, and you have a dependable, better, I guess you call it better provenance of what's happening within your GitHub action workflows.
Sorry, and just for clarification, you can have it where 401 can call a different hash, right? And so that's how you could inject a different workload into it. Yeah. So if I go download 4.0.1, I'll get a different hash. And so by tying these two together, you're never going to run into that issue where somebody can inject a different hash to that tag.
You got it.
Okay.
You got it. You're always going to get exactly. And the same thing goes for, it's one of those rules within containers, right? If you've got a container in your manifest, and it says image, nginx, : and you say 1.17, actually you should say at SHA-256 hash. And then the same thing can't happen to you in images. But it's an epic pain in the backside to do this manually. And it is. And so in the interest of securing us, this is our site, and this is our workflow. Now, is this too small? Let me know if you can read
if you could zoom in a little bit, it would help my old eyes.
All right.
Thank you.
Hold on. There we go. We've got a few actions in here. You can already see action V1. Let me push this over a little bit.
We got a latest tag in there.
Yeah, all sorts of bad stuff, right? This is what happens when I rush through it. But it's a great example of a bad example.
Great example of a bad example. Well said.
Yeah, V4. And I thought, okay, yeah, we could definitely use this. Now, he recommends using it as a pre-commit hook. I think I do have pre-commit on here. Yeah, so I have a pre-commit where I'm using checkoff to make sure that actually our own manifest is secure. Now, I could add GAT to it. I haven't done it yet, but this was his recommendations every time it automatically makes the change for you, which is a good idea, but I'm going to do it manually. So if I do GAT, that should be, I did the brew install GAT method. The install instructions are here, and there's a million ways of doing it. You can go install if you want. You can brew tap, his tap, and then go grab it. That was the easiest thing for me. There's even scoop. Like, okay, can't say he's not thorough with his install methods. And there's a Docker method of running it. And it's really simple. You can just do GAT whatever's in the directory. You can say GAT -d dot, and let's do -h actually. Gash swat updates GitHub action in place in the directory. So GAT swat, then you do -h again. And what I liked right away was the stable value. So I can say 14, --stable 14, and it won't get the latest. It'll back up 14 days to make sure that you get a new release. You don't use some hot release, hot buggy crap. So you can do a GAT swap -- stable 14, and then you know that you're not going to be using something super hot every time, and you can have this as your pre-commit again, so that it will always, you can add an action or change an action, but it'll always change the hash only if it's got a 14-day maturity.
Interesting.
I thought that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
There's a token value. You don't need that. It's there so that and I went and looked at the code for GAT too. It was like, how is get the hash, right? So I'm like, it's going to go through and find all my actions, parse the workflow, and then it's going to see the version. And I was kind of a little bit puzzled as to how it would accurately do that. And it actually uses the GitHub API to fetch the right hash for the right version. And it actually says somewhere in his help that you want to use the token if you have a huge amount of workflows, because of the GitHub rate limiting on anonymous authenticated API requests.
Gotcha.
So the token's only there if you're, I mean, it'll work. It just takes forever.
Yeah.
So I didn't really need a token because we only have a very big thing, and I don't really care about it being stable. So I was just essentially going to do the swap on our, I think I just do -d dot. Was that it? There. You see what happened. It went through everything I had to, found my .github, went falling back to anonymous auth, a little bit of a warning there, how many times it used the API, basic workflow, and then it spits out what it did. So you can see how many bits it changed from version. And now I can go over here and you can see all the git changes are here now. Docker push action, it tells me what the version was previously, 4.11. And now it's showing me the correct hash. v3, correct hash. And in fact, what I like is I just had this one here. I just had v4. But it went and found out, okay, what is v4 actually? What's the full tag for the current v4? Is it 4.16 or is it whatever? So it's worked out what the right hash is, and it's added a little comment reminder on the end to say this was the tag, the full tag.
That's very cool.
Here. And it's done that for all of them.
That's awesome.
Which is pretty cool. So now I can just check that in. The workflow, nothing should change in the actions of the workflow. It shouldn't really matter, and we're all kind of good. The only thing I thought was interesting was, and I requested it, and he's going to do it, but it might even be done now. I haven't done an update. He's pretty fast to make these fixes. If I go do a git diff, and I do my dot, do that, yeah. We can see it's made the changes in place, and away I go, right? I asked if he can add a -- preview or dry run.
Yeah.
Because I'd like to see this
before you run it.
Before I go, yeah, I'm okay with all that. Just out of my own paranoia of somebody messing with my workflow.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you don't want to have to go back and just, I mean, you could just alter the file and go back a commit or something like that, change the file back to the previous one, but that's just an annoying workflow.
Yeah. And so that was the only thing I thought was interesting. I thought, okay, I would like almost like the way Terraform works or something, or Pulumi works, where it's like it says, here's what I'm about to do. Do you want me to do it? That would be the only change I would make, I think.
It'd be awesome to do that, especially for first-time users, so that it's like, hey, here, this is what's changing. You kind of get the gist of exactly what it's trying to do as soon as you look at this file, right? Even for people who aren't necessarily familiar with it. It's like, done.
Yeah.
I get
it. That's kind of it. Short but sweet. Doesn't have a lot of other options, but that's kind of everything. And he wrote back pretty much within 2 seconds and said, "Oh yeah, good idea." So that thing with the preview is going to happen at some point soon, probably.
Very cool.
So
that's GAT, GHAT, right?
Yeah, GHAT, and James will send in. The link is down below. So. Yep. It's the last one in the show. You want to go play with it? I recommend it. I did actually go looking for alternatives to GAT because it seems like there's got to be another one. And I found another one, but I was like, it's kind of the same, you know, just go get this one. I like the idea of it, the recommendation of using pre-commit framework to make sure, you know, it's always updating. Otherwise, nice work, James. I work with him. It's like, he must have a lot of spare time. He's doing some great open source work.
Yeah, I love it because we keep on getting tool time. So thanks, James.
Yeah.
That's very cool. We don't have a tool time set up for in 2 weeks, so may have to look at some of that free trial from the Kubernetes and all that. But we will be back 2 Fridays from now. I believe that is the 18th of August.
Cool.
Cool.
I'll be here.
Yeah, we have a bunch of vacation scheduled. I know Steve has a birthday he's gonna be celebrating and all that black hat fun stuff. Don't get too hungover.
Try not.
Hit that subscribe bell, hit the button, the subscribe thing. You'll know exactly when we're going live. Until then, I'm Mike Foster. He's Steve Giguere, and have a great weekend.